Our teaching text tonight comes from Matthew 20, verses 20 through 28. Then the mother of Zebedee's sons came to Jesus with her sons, and kneeling down, asked a favor of him. "What is it you want?" he asked. She said, "Grant that one of these two sons of mine may sit at your right and the other at your left in your kingdom." "You don't know what you're asking," Jesus said to them. "Can you drink the cup that I am going to drink?" "We can," they answered. Jesus said to them, "You will indeed drink from my cup, but to sit at my right or left is not for me to grant. These places belong to those for whom they have been prepared for by my Father." When the 10 heard about this, they were indignant with the two brothers. Jesus called them together and said, "You know that the rulers and the Gentiles lord it over them, and their high officials exercise authority over them. Not so with you. Instead, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant, and whoever wants to be first must be your slave. Just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many." This is the word of the Lord. You may be seated.
Good evening. We are continuing our series tonight, our Advent series on Christ appearing. Last week, the Son of David. Tonight, the Son of Man. We are moving towards Christmas, and everybody knows that the goal of Christmas is the great miracle of Christmas. And do you know what that miracle is? A change of heart. Change of heart. All great Christmas movies talk about a Scrooge-ish archetype. Let's bring the Scrooge's archetype, having a change of heart. Here's my favorite change of heart, The Grinch. We'll talk about a great show, change of heart. And you know how it basically goes. There's somebody who has been self-obsessed, narcissistic, focused on his own life, who, when the miracle and wonder of Christmas comes along, a little bit of generosity dust comes on his heart. And all of a sudden, he sees things in a new light and comes to his senses in a prodigal sort of response. And everything is changed forever and ever. Amen. Now, the problem with living in a secular culture like ours is we have removed out of our culture the component of Christmas that enables the transformation of heart. And so as a result, what you get is the shell of religious nostalgia without the potency of religious power. So and we know that we need this. If you only get one day to undo that selfish, narcissistic formation you get all year, you got to stretch that day earlier and earlier in the year. Starbucks doing those Christmas cups in October. You want to know why? Can't change the secular heart without months of just like banging on the Happy Holidays drum. Soon we're going to be celebrating Christmas in February to try and deal with the hardness of our own hearts. It is seriously, though, impossible to hollow out the sacred meaning of something and retain its transformative power. And so that's why Christians celebrate Christmas every year as good news, because we do believe that the gospel has the power to transform the human heart. So I want to just give you my core statement for tonight. Christmas is not a sentimental consumer opportunity. It is a divine disruption into the brokenness of our world. And that is true. John Stackhouse says this: "Carols stir us, holy words inspire us, the golden glow from the manger warms us. Little religion and Christmas is fine." But here's what he says: "That glow in the manger comes from the light of the world. It exposes evil and either redeems it or destroys it. The babe in the manger is far more than an object for sentimental size. He's the Son of God who must be accepted as a ruler or confronted as a rival." And so tonight we're going to talk about how Jesus, as, this is a very key title, the Son of Man, comes and disrupts our understanding of what is happening at Christmas. Now, to put this passage in context, the teaching text tonight doesn't feel very Christmassy, does it? What you've basically got is a situation where the disciples are walking down the road doing some ministry with Christ, and then a tiger mum sort of just like sneaks into the group. And she comes along and she says, "Hey, Jesus, it's Zebedee's wife here. You took my sons, they were fishing, and you asked them to follow you, and they dropped their nets and they left. And now Zebedee's been catching all the fish on his own. The boys are gone. So I'm just wondering if you can do me a solid. What I want you to do is I want to get my two sons on your left hand and on your right hand when you come into your kingdom and to your power." And so Jesus is like, "Look, I appreciate your heart as a mom and all that. So let me just ask you a couple of questions. Number one, can you drink the cup I'm about to drink?" Jesus is about to drink the cup of the Father's wrath. They have no idea. And they're like, 100%, we're good for it. He's like, I'm not sure. And then he asks him another question, which is he talks about his inability to do this because it's a sovereign decree of his Father. And somehow you can imagine you're walking along and here comes this mom. "Hey, look, I want you to do me a favor here. I want each of my sons to be with you. I want them in your inner core." And then the other guys come along and they're like, "Yo, what's your mom doing here?" And they're like, "Oh, she's just trying to, nothing. She's just..." And then when they find like, "Are you kidding? You brought your mom into this? You got mom involved, trying to get a left hand, right hand on the side of Jesus here. This is unacceptable." And a dispute breaks out and they start to resent them. And then Jesus puts a wrecking ball through their understanding of what it means to serve in the kingdom of heaven by redefining what it is to be the Son of Man. So I have a simple goal tonight. I want to just give you a fresh sense of wonder at this divine disruption in the understanding of what it means that Christ is the Son of Man. So first thing here, number one, Jesus in this answer is disrupting the cultural understanding of what greatness is. Verse 25, "You know, the rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and the high officials exercise authority over them. Not so with you. Instead, whoever wants to become great amongst you must be your servant." Now, to understand how the Roman Empire worked, and to some degree how the Jewish community lived at that time, it was an honor culture, which meant everybody was striving for honor. There was a vision that your life would be a life recognized as a life of honor. They were asking the question that we still ask in our culture today, and here's the question: who is the GOAT? Now, we ask the question about the GOAT all the time. There's been a lot of conjecture in the arena of basketball. Is LeBron the GOAT or is Jordan the GOAT? Let me just settle this once and for all time with the word of the Lord. Jordan is the GOAT. That's the end of that. When it comes to soccer, a lot of time, is it Messi or is it... No, it's just Messi. Messi is the GOAT. This is the end of the story. I'm trying to do a lot of good work here tonight early, okay? Here's the point I'm trying to make. Next slide. Everybody is asking the question, what does it mean to be the greatest of all time? Everybody wants to know who's the GOAT. Jesus is going to answer this. The Roman Empire was an empire obsessed with greatness. Rome believed it was the next slide, greatest empire of all time, obsessed with a vision of cultural and empirical greatness. The emperors were always seeking to be the greatest emperor. The greatest emperor, I think, was Augustus. But in the time of Jesus, there was a man who self-declared himself to be the GOAT. And his name was Herod, but he went along and called himself Herod the Great. And Herod the impact of Herod and his greatness still hung over the Jewish community in their day. And Herod the Great built an incredible empire. All of these resources done, all of these buildings deployed. He was like the Elon Musk of his day. But he oppressed people. And he did this because he, even though he was an Idumean and Jewish king, brought into the cultural script of the need to be the GOAT. Sociologists call this script the winner's script. Now, a script is something that is sort of like the lines you read and rehearse in your heart All of you live out of cultural script. Some of them are from your parents. They told you how to think, act, believe, and what to love. Some of you have rewritten some of those scripts based on your own education and experiences and YouTube videos. Other people have addressed their scripts through studying philosophy or the scriptures, but all of us are looking inward for a kind of internal cohesive narrative, how to live out of. And the dominant script in our society today is the winner script. I want to give you just like a little bit of an overview of the winner script and just see if any of this has impacted you. So down the bottom here, the winner script, up and to the right, okay? Down the bottom, be born into a good family for cultural advantage. If not, you can use that story for advantage or overcoming narrative to fuel for improvement. Attend a good grade school, learn people skills and study. Then you get in a good middle school where you begin to differentiate from the pack. Good high school, prepare for elite college. Get into and dominate good college. Work in a well-paying industry with cultural respect. Attract dope smart partner who is also dope and smart, no middle out at all. Promotions and outward signs of wealth and respect. Do interesting things that others envy. Know elite, interesting, and powerful people. Have beautiful children with French-sounding names. Use accumulated power to get kids not into a good school, into an elite school. Elite middle school, elite high school, elite college, elite field. Crushing it. Preserving power and preserving wealth. Now, you may think that's not true, but there is more of that in this system than ever. And you know where everybody comes to live out the winner's script? New York, concrete junk. This is exactly where this script, it doesn't matter if you're Jay-Z grinding all the way up. It doesn't matter if you're from the Upper East Side or Tribeca and being preserved in a multi-generational legacy. What the culture tells us is you got to get better, you got to earn it. You need greatness, and if you can't get it in your culture, at least get it in your family. If you're an immigrant, you feel this pressure. Parents putting pressure on you. You got to be great for us. Now the challenge is, listen, and look, I'm not saying that the gospel is a loser's script, but I am saying this, you should interrogate how much this is in you and how deep this is driving you. Because what Jesus is about to do, in spite of all of their definitions and understanding of greatness, is he's going to redefine what greatness actually is. Again, you know the rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their high officials exercise authority over them. Not so with you. Whoever wants to become great must be your servant. So Jesus confronts the winner's script with a completely different vision of how greatness is achieved. He said, hey, it's okay to want to be great. You want to be the GOAT? Okay. It's okay to believe that being around Jesus wakes up and stirs a vision for greatness. But you've got to see how he redefines it. And he redefines it by the servant script. David Brooks says this, we live in the culture of the big me. The meritocracy wants you to promote yourself. Social media wants you to broadcast a highlight reel of your life. Your parents and teachers were always telling you how wonderful you were. But all the people I've ever deeply admired are profoundly honest about their own weaknesses. They've identified their core sin, whether it be selfishness, the desperate need for approval, cowardice, hard-heartedness, or whatever. They've traced how that core sin leads to the behavior that makes them feel ashamed. They've achieved a profound humility, which has best been defined as, listen to this, an intense self-awareness from a position of other-centeredness. And he's really echoing that Brooks is a believer. He's echoing the Christ hymn from Philippians chapter 2. Look at what it says in Philippians 2. Do nothing out of selfish ambition. So what should you do out of selfish ambition? Yes, so do nothing. That's a totalizing statement. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interests of the others. In your relationships with one another, have the same mindset. We talk about having a growth mindset, talk about grit. Who's talking about having the other-centered mindset? having the same mindset as Christ Jesus, who being in very nature God, did not consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage. Rather, he made himself nothing by taking the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness, and being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to death, even death on a cross. I want to show you the servant script, which is descending into true greatness. Be the eternal God. This is where it starts, Christ. Then he loves a rebellious creation. He's born in scandal among the poor. He lives 30 years in total obscurity. He preaches a message that offends. He calls unlikely disciples. He eats with outcasts. He rejects popular applause. He invests in a few without much noticeable impact. He's rejected and betrayed. He submits his will to another. He dies at the hands of his enemies. He's buried in a borrowed grave. He rises again and he rules and reigns at the right hand of the Father. That's amazing. That is the servant script. And Jesus is going to try and shake the winner script out of the hearts of all who follow him. He's going to say to him, what good is it to gain the whole world but lose your very self, your soul? You want to save your life? You're going to lose it. You're going to lose your life. And listen, I want to say this. Here's why. We all know in our spirits that greatness is not arrogant people maximizing themselves at the sake of others. We're exhausted by cultural greatness. We're just wishing there was someone who didn't use people for themselves. And here is Christ, who takes what he has and uses it for others. David Brooks is going to say that it's not good to live for resume virtues. And at the end of your life, no one's going to really say, I wish I'd worked more. He talks about eulogy virtues, which is at the end of your life having people, say things like, he's a good dad, respected in the community. But it's not enough. Non-Christians can have those. You've got to have Christ-like virtues. And this is the way of the cross, the way of descent, the way of humility. And we know in our hearts that when you meet someone who truly loves, who leverages what they have for others, who sacrifices. Let me just ask a question. What is a great dad? I'm a dad. Okay, so it's a dad illustration. What is a great dad? Is a great dad one who's super accomplished, makes a bunch of money, is respected by their peers? Or is a great dad the one who sacrifices his time and energy and attention and goes to games he does not like, sports he does not understand, and does it with his whole heart out of love? You ask anybody, the great dad is the dad who sacrifices the most, not achieves the most at work. And the great leader is the one who sacrifices the most and not leverages what they have for the sake of others. So can I ask you a question? Where do your internal scripts need disruption by Jesus' redefinition of greatness? This is a city that draws people by pride and fuels them by pride. And I think Jesus wants to give us a redefinition of greatness. Second thing, Jesus wants to disrupt our understanding of servanthood. Verse 28, just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve. This is you're too familiar with this. Otherwise, you would have just been like, you would have gasped if you got this. Someone should have said, "Gosh!" Someone should have yelled something from the back, like, "You can't mean that," because he can't mean that, can he? The Son of Man did not come to serve, but to be served. Now, there's 3 words in this short little text here that were nuclear level controversy in this verse. Do you know which 3 words it is? Pardon me? Son of Man. Son of Man. You read this and you're like, well, Son of Man. At the time, Son of Man was a loaded term. It was a religiously and politically charged term. So I want you to think about the Middle East right now. Okay? Israel, Gaza, Hezbollah, Iran, UAE. I mean, like, that thing is complicated. And it is a tinderbox. And any small thing could trigger could trigger World War III. I mean, someone just has to send a nuke. I mean, this is a very complicated situation. So any kind of political claim or religious claim or messianic claim, any kind of narrative of assertion of the ability to rise up and solve the problem is bound to trigger reaction and counter-reaction and controversy. And part of the reason that Jesus ended up being crucified was because he said, "Yo people, I am the Son of Man." And so Jesus, at the start of his ministry, so the Son of Man was this, let's skip to apocalyptic vision. Next one. Jesus was confirming the Jewish understanding of this end-time apocalyptic vision. And it came from the book of Daniel about one who would rise as a ruler who would come and bring peace to the people of God. This is from Daniel. "In my vision at night, I looked and there stood before me one like," what's that say? That's the part when I say, "What's that say?" You say it really loudly together. Let's just do that one more time. "In my vision at night, I looked and there stood before me one like the Son of Man, coming with the clouds of heaven. And he approaches the Ancient of Days and was led into his presence. And he was given authority, glory, and sovereign power." These are key terms. Authority, glory, sovereign power. "All nations and all peoples of every language worship him." Now you think about Matthew 28 and the Great Commission. His dominion is an everlasting dominion that will not pass away. And his kingdom is one that will never be destroyed. And so you remember between the closing of the Old Testament and the New Testament was a period of 400 years. You just pop from Malachi to Matthew like it ain't no thing. 400 years in there. This was called the intertestamental period, and this was the rise and fall of nations in this time. Alexander the Great dies, breaks the world into four particular regions. Each region has its own sort of working. Antiochus of Epiphanes is the one who oversaw the area where the Jewish people were. He was a godless man. He wanted to do a thing called Hellenization, which is like colonization, which is basically to sever the people from their story, from their family, from their history, and to remove their agency. And so he goes to pollute the temple. A godly priest rises up. They start a civil war, Judas Maccabeus. They fight Antiochus Epiphanes and the Greeks. They win for a while. They eventually lose. The Romans roll in. 400 years, they're demoralized. And so you imagine 400 years of longing for a breakthrough, longing for deliverance. And then all of a sudden, Jesus shows up. And Jesus, I'm about to skip me some slides, whoever's doing the slides. Jesus shows up and he starts making these claims. He starts saying that he has authority on earth. So in Mark 2, this feels like nothing. You imagine how shocking this was. There's a temple that Herod built. There's a high priesthood that is politically interwoven with the Romans. There's a sacrificial system. There's people coming from all over the world for the festivals. And then Jesus says this: "I appreciate the temple. I appreciate the Day of Atonement. I appreciate your traditions. But I want you to know I have authority on earth to forgive sins." Do you know how controversial that was? It would be like, hey, listen, the temple, appreciate that. I'm the new temple. You got a high priest, I'm your new high priest. Got a sacrificial system, I'm the Lamb of God. And all of that means I can forgive you if I want to. People would have been, this is the Son of Man. And he says that he's going to have glory and judgment. Look at Matthew 24. "They will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory." This is Christ saying, the Son of Man, that's me, and I'm coming with power and glory. And so they would have been amazed going, one greater than Moses is here. One greater than the temple, greater than the priest, greater than the sacrificial system. He's here. And Jesus is like, yes, I am, and I'm coming with power and glory. And they were like, let's go. And then the wheels start to fall off because their expectations are he's going to destroy the Romans. He's going to set up a theocracy on earth. The Jewish community is going to rule under the Messiah, and all the nations are going to come and serve him. And so when Jesus starts saying, actually, what I'm going to do with my power is I'm going to serve all the nations. And what I'm going to do is make you love your enemies. And your neighbor is not your Jewish neighbor, it's your enemy neighbor. And they start going, I'm not sure I want this. And he says, no, you don't understand. I'm not going to save you so the nations will serve you. I'm going to save you so you can serve the nations. And the record goes, they're like, what? I'm not sure I signed up for this. To repeat, remember Peter's revelation. Jesus says, who do you say that I am? And he says, you are the Christ, the Son of the Most High God. Jesus says, flesh and blood has not revealed this to you. And he's like, I know. You should probably go ahead and build your church on me. Your boy is solid. And then 2 seconds later, when Jesus says, okay, great, you know who I am. That means you know my mission. I'm going to be handed over and betrayed and suffer at the hands of sinful men and be crucified. And Peter says, this is not going to be so. And then Peter goes from a very high to a very low, where Jesus says, get behind me, Satan. And he says this, you don't have in mind the things of God, but the things of man. Hear this. It is possible to have revelation about Jesus, but run it through an earthly kingdom grid. And so they just don't have a vision of how radical this redefinition of servanthood is for them. So Jesus comes along and he says this, the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve and give his life as a ransom for many. So I want you to see the controversial nature of this. C.S. Lewis says this, the Son of God became a man to enable men to become the sons of God. Christ comes as the second Adam, lives the life we couldn't live, dies the death we deserve, rises again on our behalf, and then tells us through his power to go and serve the nations. So to ask a question, where do you need fresh gratitude? At Christ's humility. Are you seeking to accumulate power so it flows to you and others serve you? Or is your heart to steward what you have so that your power flows to serve and to lift others up? And you may think that being a Christian is irrelevant in the workplace, but I want to tell you, in many ways, all workplaces is hungry hippo. It's just like people taking as much as they can get. And when you show up, not just to use people to accumulate power so that you can have more people serve you, but you use your power to serve others and empower others, that is a distinct kingdom advantage in a place like New York. Number 3, disruptive sacrifice. The Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many. Now, this is important because Jesus is making a claim about the need for forgiveness and the need for salvation. And here's what he says. You do not have the power to save yourself through self-sacrifice and effort. And you will abuse people if you sacrifice them to secure and save yourself. He says, no, I have come not to be served, but to serve and to give my life as a ransom for many. Keller says this, a God who is only holy would not have come down to us in Jesus Christ. He would have simply demanded that we pull ourselves together, that all we need be is moral and holy enough to merit a relationship with him. So for many people, the angels would have announced, do better, do the work, do better, try harder. Okay? He says no. A deity that was all-accepting and all-accepting God of love would not have needed to come to earth either. The God of the imagination would have just overlooked sin and evil and embraced us. You're good. You do you. I love it when you do you. But neither the God of moralism nor the God of relativism would have bothered with Christmas. And it's telling us something very, very important. It's telling us that Christ alone is both holy and both loving, and the only one who bothers to step into the human condition and save us. See, the real test of a leader is what they do with their strength. What they do with their strength. Listen, why do people hate churches? Why are people suspicious of large churches? You want to know why? Because there's a track record of leaders accumulating power and hurting people. And they're like, you know what? It's a little awkward me saying this, but can I just acknowledge the elephant in the room? Just go ahead and say that, okay? The test is what a leader does with their strength. Does the church exist to build people, or do people exist to build the church? This is a very, very different question here. So the real test of a leader is what they do with their strength. Let's have a 2x2. So on one side, when it comes to leadership, there's two things we really ache for. On one side, you need power to actually get things done. You need power to get things done. Without power, you're just a dreamer. But on the other side, you need love. And this begins the great tension we feel. And this is why I genuinely believe there's nobody like Jesus in all of human history. So on one side, here's what you get. Number one, you get people. You get people with a little bit of power who basically have no love. They're just cocooning themselves in a little me party. It's just me. It's an inward focus. It's accumulate. It's hoard. And here's what they hope. By getting as much power as they can and having enough self-love that they can, one day they're going to transform themselves out of this cocoon into a beautiful self-actualized butterfly that everybody adores. And can we be honest? We don't need any more cocooning people. Next slide. What happens if you get people who accumulate a lot of power? Crushing it. Crushing it. I've pointed out so many times the American affinity for violent rhetoric. Americans love violence in language. How's he doing? Crushing it, destroying it, annihilating it. Bro, how's work going? Dominating everyone. We love this, crushing it. It's been pointed out before, whenever someone's crushing it, what's being crushed is normally others. Next, you get people. And we think we just have people who are compassionate. Compassion is a beautiful word. Look it up in the dictionary. It means the sufferings of Christ. It has the idea of coming alongside and feeling deeply with another. And we love it when we meet compassionate people, don't we? When you meet someone who's compassionate, this will change your life. You feel valued, you feel heard, you feel seen. But at some point, if all you have is a compassionate friend, and all they do is like super empathize with you, at some point, maybe 2 years in, maybe 14 years in, I don't know how long your pain threshold, at some point you start going, thank you for your emotional support. Can you help me do anything about this? Like what I want to do is I want to move on. I want to grow. I need a little resilience. They're like, don't worry about that. I got you. Thank you for having me. Can you help me? No, And so we feel stuck in these conundrums. We're suspicious of power, people who will crush us. We're suspicious of compassion if it goes forever and it doesn't help us. And next slide here, this is why this to me is just so extraordinary. There's no leader in all of human history that claimed to have unlimited power to raise the dead, to heal the sick, to control nature, to speak and forgive sins, to say that I am. And at the same time, there's no one who, with all of that power, wept and washed feet and paid attention to the outcast and loved the sinner and showed compassion. There is nobody in all of history who merged both power and compassion like the person of Jesus. And this is why he comes to us as a ransom. He says this, I have come to do for you what you cannot do for yourself. I have come to use my power in compassion for your powerlessness and to give my life to save you and do for you what you cannot do for yourself, and to raise you back up out of shame and brokenness and exhaustion and pride from living the winner script, and to bring you into my kingdom. And this is what John Stott says, the essence of sin is man substituting himself for God, while the essence of salvation is God substituting himself for man. Adam in his pride says, I want to be God. Jesus says, I am God, but I'm happy to serve and lay my life down for you. And that's the salvation that we experience. So where do you need fresh worship for your salvation? Imagine hearing this now, knowing what we know. Jesus calls them together and he says this, you know how the culture works. You know how elites use power to cocoon themselves with privilege and wealth and status with the goal of preserving and leveraging it for themselves and their people at all costs. Don't be like that. Instead, whoever wants to become great amongst you should be the servant. And whoever wants to be first must be like a slave. And then he says this. And if Marshall McLuhan was right, if the medium is the message, which means the way that God shows up tells us what he's like, just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and give his life as a ransom for many. And so we are going to, as an application point tonight, take a moment to thank Jesus that he has used his power and his love to do for us what we cannot do for ourselves. We're going to take a moment in humility to get out of the fight of our culture that's sitting here angry that we don't have more prominence, angry that people are trying to leverage and get ahead of it. We're just going to step out and take a moment and say, Jesus, I'm in awe of you. The greatest man who's ever lived, the God-man, humbled himself. The servant script descended out of love to raise us and do for us what we could not do for ourselves. That baby in the manger, as was pointed out, rises to become a man. And how does Jesus use his power? Suffering love. He forgives his enemies when they're crucifying him. Looks at his mother when everybody's abandoned her. Looks at the one guilty and says, today you'll be with me in paradise. There's no one like this man. And that's why the Roman Empire, which thought it was the greatest, is just a bunch of ruins that you go and see. There's nothing there. And that's why the Church of Jesus Christ, though it started as nothing, has grown to over 2 billion people. And the entire human race in every country, in every place, will lift its eyes at this time of year because greatness has been redefined, servanthood has been redefined, sacrifice has been redefined, and that great disruption can disrupt our hearts and pull us into a story bigger than ourselves. So we're going to worship tonight. On the way in, you should have received the communion elements. If you didn't get these, would you just pop your hand up? We'll have someone come and bring them to you. If you need this, would you just put your hands up? Our ushers will come and bring this to you. On the night that he was betrayed, pull that slide up. On the night that Jesus was betrayed, he took the bread, that this is my body, broken for you. Eat this in remembrance of me. Now, before you eat, so easy to forget God at Christmas. So easy to get mad at the tourists clogging up your regular routes. So mad to get angry at $8 lattes. There's just so many things that block us and cause us to forget the wonder of what we celebrate. Here is the Son of Man. Here is the greatest man who's ever lived, laying down his life for us, doing for us what we cannot do for ourselves. And he doesn't ask us to do anything, doesn't ask us to pay him back, doesn't ask us to hate ourselves, doesn't ask us to try harder. Here's what he says: receive me and remember me. It's just a grateful heart. And so we're going to remember Christ, and I says, do this in remembrance of me. And in the middle of a city that forgets, It's forgotten the meaning of Christmas. It's forgotten the sacred source of the transformative power of the human heart. It relies on guilt and nostalgia, which is completely ineffective. Brothers and sisters, here is the bread of life that can nourish your hungry spirit. Let's remember Christ who gave himself for us. This is the bread of life. Let's eat with gratitude and remember Christ. And then Jesus took the cup and he says, this cup is my blood of the new covenant shed for the forgiveness of your sins. He says, drink this in remembrance of me. And he says this. It's a beautiful phrase. He says, I'm not going to do this again until I drink of the vine in the kingdom of God. So every time we remember this, we remember our story does not end in shame and failure and death. It ends at a table that Christ is preparing for us, the marriage supper of the Lamb, and he is longing to be with us to celebrate our salvation together. So this is a reminder of where we're headed and the open door we have because of Christ dying for us. Brothers and sisters, this is the cup of life. Let's remember and thank Jesus tonight. I want to just move us towards a time of response by just reminding you of one little thing in the Gospels. See, there's no doubt that the majority of people here tonight, you feel the tension of the winner script in your heart. You feel that cultural formation. Some of you got shame because you feel like your life has not been up and to the right. You feel like you're stuck, you're stagnant. Others, you grinding so hard, you're like, I think I actually may make it in New York. And some of you have made it and you're just figuring out, dear God, can I sustain this? And more than anything, what you need is rest and relief. The ability to rest in the security of the accomplishment of another. The words from the cross are not do more, the words from the cross are done. The words from the cross are not, you should struggle your whole life. It is finished. And Jesus says this, come to me, all you who are weary and heavy laden, and I'll give you rest. Take my yoke upon you, learn from me. And what does he say? I am gentle and humble of heart. And Jesus would love tonight, in his mercy, to just take that winner script, that striving, that pride, that performance out of your heart. And with zero shame and judgment, he would like to rewrite the script of your heart into one of security and servanthood, where out of all he has done for you, you realize you are free to give it away for others. So if you're coming to the end of the year, end of the semester, end of the quarter, and you're tired from grinding, and you're tired from trying to sustain an impossible measure of success in the city, I want to invite you tonight to come to the heart of Christ, who is gentle and humble, and get rest for your souls. So if you're here tonight, you need rest, you want the script of your heart to change, maybe you want to repent of pride and you want to ask God to do a work of humility in you. Maybe you're super ambitious and you want greatness and you need Jesus to redefine that and give you a fresh vision of what that is. We'd love to be able to pray for you. You don't have to walk out with your heavy burdens tonight. You don't have to walk out with your cultural exhaustion. You don't have to walk out with that sense of I'm not enough, I can't do enough, and I can't keep this up. You can leave with Christ saying over you, because I'm enough, you're enough. Because I died, you can live. Because I have unlimited power, you can rely on my strength. So let's stand together, and I want our prayer team to come forward. And I just want to say, if you need rest, if you're weary, if you're tired, if you're prideful, if you're exhausted, if you're lost, if you're not right with God, this can be a life-changing moment for you. And so if you sense the Spirit drawing you, you sense something rising in your heart saying, I want what Jesus is talking about and offering, we would love to be able to pray for you. So the leaders will be down the front here. They'll have lanyards on, and all you have to do is just come forward. And if you can't even talk, just put your hands out. They'll just pray a blessing over you. So let's not just hear Jesus' invitation tonight. Let's respond to all he asks for us. So come forward as you feel led.